What happens when the man you just disrespected turns out to be your boss's boss? It was just past 6:30 p.m. when Ruben Ellington pulled off Loop 101 and into the shaded driveway of the Sierra Marais Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. The sun hadn't cooled down one bit, despite the early evening hour. The pavement shimmered with leftover heat, and the mountains in the distance were dyed orange and pink, like someone had brushed the sky with watercolor. Ruben reached for the gear shift, put the car in park, and let out a slow breath. In the back seat, his 9-year-old daughter, Aubrey, had finally dozed off, her cheek pressed against the car window, lips slightly parted. Her worn tablet had slid off her lap, showing a paused cartoon still on the screen. Ruben just sat there for a second, not moving, not thinking too hard, just taking it in. It had been a long drive from San Diego, 6 hours, counting the gas stops and a couple fast food bathroom breaks. And truth be told, he hadn't needed to make the trip, not personally at least, but something about it felt right, necessary. The Sierra Marais had just undergone a 6-month renovation under his management firm, and though Ruben owned the property, his name wasn't public. That was intentional. He liked keeping his investments quiet, but this trip wasn't about business. It was about a promise. Aubrey's birthday was in 2 days, and ever since she'd seen the photos of the hotel with the waterfall lobby, she hadn't stopped talking about it. So Ruben decided, skip the usual Disney trip, skip the noise, and bring her somewhere peaceful, just the two of them. He looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Hey, baby girl," he said softly, tapping the steering wheel. Aubrey stirred, blinking her eyes open. "Are we here?" Ruben smiled. "We're here." She perked up, stretching in her seat. "Can we swim tonight?" "Let's check in first, then see about that pool." He opened the door, stepping out into the dry heat. His knees cracked a little, a reminder of his time overseas. The kind of reminder that doesn't go away with age or comfort. He walked around to open Aubrey's door. She climbed out, holding her pink backpack like it was made of glass. Ruben didn't look like a man with wealth. He was in a navy t-shirt, cargo shorts, and some old running shoes that had seen better days. His hair was cropped close, his face clean-shaven, and his skin carried the shade of someone used to sunlight and discipline. Years in the Marines will do that to a man, but he wasn't here to be recognized. He was here to rest. He took Aubrey's small suitcase from the trunk and walked toward the front entrance with her hand in his. The lobby of the Sierra Marais was cool and smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. The sound of the cascading indoor waterfall filled the background, just like in the pictures. Aubrey's eyes lit up. Look at that wall. It's really water." Ruben grinned. "Told you it was real." The front desk had 3 staff members. 2 were chatting behind the monitor, laughing at something on one of their phones. The third, a sharply dressed young woman with dark lipstick and a name tag that read Mackenzie, looked up from her monitor as they approached. Ruben gave a nod and a polite smile. "Evening. Checking in. Name's Ruben Ellington. Should be under Ellington Travel Partners." Mackenzie's smile faded as she looked him over. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. Do you have a confirmation number?" she asked, not making eye contact. Ruben raised an eyebrow but kept his tone light. "Shouldn't need one. We own the property. I booked directly through the firm last week. 5 nights. Deluxe suite. Just me and my daughter." Mackenzie gave a tight smile. "One moment." She clicked around the computer with exaggerated movements, glancing at Ruben every so often like he was wasting her time. After about 15 seconds, she looked up and sighed. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we're fully booked for the week. There must have been a mix-up." Ruben blinked, confused. "That can't be right." "It happens," she said with a shrug, already moving on to the next guest in line. "You could try the hotel across the street. They might have something." Ruben glanced down at Aubrey, who had gone quiet, eyes darting between them. He turned back to Mackenzie. "Can you double-check, please?" But Mackenzie had already called over the next guest, a couple dressed in golf polos and luggage straight off the rack at REI. She smiled at them brightly. "Welcome to Sierra Marais. Checking in?" Ruben stepped back, his jaw set, not in anger, but in that firm, controlled way that men like him had learned in war zones, courtrooms, and boardrooms. He bent down and whispered to Aubrey, "Let's take a seat for a second, okay?" She nodded, confused but quiet. They moved to a side bench near the artificial waterfall. He watched as the couple was handed 2 key cards with wide smiles and 0 friction. He didn't say a word, but he saw everything. He wasn't angry yet, but something told him this wasn't just a booking issue. Ruben watched as the couple smiled their way toward the elevator, the bellhop already trailing behind them with 2 designer suitcases. The same bellhop gave Ruben a once-over, but didn't say a word, just looked, then looked away. He sat with Aubrey quietly for a moment. She kicked her legs against the bench, hugging her backpack. "Daddy," she said softly, "did they forget our room?" He forced a smile. "I don't think they forgot. I think someone just didn't want to look." Aubrey tilted her head, unsure. "Why?" He paused, looked down at his hands. Sometimes people make decisions based on what they think they see, not what's real. Her eyes didn't leave his. "Like a disguise?" "Kind of," he said, "but the disguise isn't on me." Before she could ask what that meant, Ruben stood. "Let's try again." He walked back to the front desk, this time without his daughter. Mackenzie had just finished checking in another pair of guests, older gentlemen in polos who were chatting about tea times and drink tickets. "Excuse me," Ruben said calmly. Mackenzie sighed. "Sir, I told you." "I heard you," he interrupted. "But I need you to do one thing for me. Type in the name Ellington Travel Partners and check the reservations under that file." Mackenzie hesitated, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. "Look, I already checked," and Ruben didn't raise his voice. He didn't scowl. He simply leaned forward and said, "Please." There was a shift, a slight one, but it was there. Her eyes narrowed just a bit. Her shoulders stiffened. Still, she clicked. She typed, scrolled, paused. For a flash, just a second, her face changed. A flicker of recognition. Then it vanished. "Nope," she said quickly, clicking out of the screen. "Nothing. Like I said, we're full. I'm sorry." Ruben watched her. He said nothing, nodded once, then stepped aside. From a chair in the corner, Aubrey watched her dad walk slowly toward the lounge area, past the front desk. He didn't look mad. He looked like someone collecting information, quiet, focused. He found a seat near a large indoor planter and pulled out his phone. A few taps and a call connected. "Lisa, yeah, it's Ruben. I'm at Sierra Mare with Aubrey." Pause. "No, not yet. I was just told the hotel's full." Pause. "Yes, I'm aware of the irony." He chuckled once, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Can you have someone confirm the booking file on your end?" "Yes, under the usual. I don't want anything special. Just check. I'll wait." He hung up and leaned back. Aubrey had come to sit beside him now, resting her head on his arm. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we going to have to sleep in the car?" He looked at her. That question hit differently, not because they couldn't afford better, but because he remembered what it was like when that was the only option. "No, sweet pea, we're not." He kissed the top of her head. Just then, his phone buzzed. One message, then another, both from Lisa. "Confirmed. Your suite is in the system. Booked under Ellington Travel, 5 nights. Room 314. They definitely have it. Want me to call the GM?" He stared at the screen, then at the front desk. "No," he replied. "Let's give them one more chance." He stood again, phone still in hand, and walked back toward the counter. This time, a different staffer, a tall man in a beige blazer, around 30, thin mustache, name tag, Calvin, stepped forward. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" Ruben gave him a look, not aggressive, just direct. "Hi, I've been trying to check in. My booking's under Ellington Travel Partners, room 314. Calvin nodded and started typing. Mackenzie, standing nearby, suddenly grew quiet. After a few seconds, Calvin blinked and looked back up. "Huh, you're right. It's here. 5 nights, deluxe suite. My apologies, Mr. Ellington." He didn't even flinch at the name. But Mackenzie? She flinched. Just a little. Ruben kept his voice even. "So the room's available?" Calvin cleared his throat. "Yes, sir. Not sure why that didn't come up before." "You might want to look into that," Ruben replied. Calvin nodded. "Absolutely. I'll get your keys printed. Would you like help with your bags?" "No," Ruben said. "I'd like to speak with your general manager." Now Calvin paused. The GM's not in until tomorrow morning." Ruben tilted his head. "Okay, assistant GM? I'll see if she's available." Calvin disappeared into the back. Reuben glanced at Mackenzie, who suddenly found something fascinating about her pen. Aubrey returned to his side, her hands slipping into his. "Did we get our room now?" "We did," he said, then added, "but I'm not done yet." Because Reuben wasn't just checking in anymore, he was paying attention. Calvin returned a few minutes later, slightly flushed, holding 2 freshly printed key cards. "Here you are, Mr. Ellington," he said, setting them down with a careful smile. "Room 314, 3rd floor. Elevators to your left." Reuben didn't reach for the keys. He looked him in the eye. "Did your assistant GM come out with you?" Calvin hesitated, then offered a tight nod. "She's, tied up on a call right now. She asked if you'd be willing to wait, or if she can reach out tomorrow." "I'll wait," Reuben said simply. He could feel Mackenzie's eyes on him, but she wasn't speaking. She stayed perfectly still, like hoping she'd disappear if she didn't move. Aubrey tugged at his shirt. "Can I go look at the waterfall while we wait?" He nodded. "Stay where I can see you." She skipped off a few feet and crouched near the low marble wall that held the cascading water. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, fascinated by the way her fingers distorted in the ripples. Reuben turned back to the desk. "You said the hotel was full." Mackenzie finally spoke. "Yes, earlier. I must have overlooked something." "That something was me," Reuben said. Calvin shifted awkwardly. "Look, I'm sure it was a simple mistake." "Was it?" He said it calmly, no anger, but the weight of the question landed like a brick. Calvin opened his mouth, then shut it. Mackenzie's posture had changed. Her face wasn't defensive now, it was embarrassed. Reuben picked up the key cards. "I'll go up and settle in. But later, I'd like 10 minutes of your assistant GM's time. This isn't over." They both nodded silently. As Reuben and Aubrey stepped into the elevator, the door slid shut with a soft chime. He glanced down at his daughter. She looked up at him. Why didn't they want to give us our room? He thought for a moment, choosing his words. Because some people judge what they don't know. They see a guy in old sneakers with a kid in tow, and they don't think he belongs in a place like this. "But we do," she said. "You said we own it." "We do." "So, they made a mistake?" "They made a choice," he corrected, "and now it's my turn." Because Reuben hadn't come just for vacation anymore. Now it was about principle. They arrived at room 314. The suite was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to a view of Camelback Mountain. A long sectional faced a mounted TV. The decor was modern, clean, warm, just as he'd approved it in the renovation. Aubrey ran to the balcony. "Daddy, you can see the whole pool!" He joined her, watching the sunset over the desert horizon. The moment should have felt peaceful, but his jaw stayed tight. His phone buzzed again. Text from Lisa. "Want me to call the board, or legal?" He typed back, "No, but send the district director this number. Tell them I'm here until Thursday. If they want to know why their front desk just tried to walk off a paying guest, they can ask me." He put the phone down. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find a woman in her late 40s, short-cropped blonde hair, blazer over a black top. Her badge read Amelia Rowe, Assistant General Manager. "Mr. Ellington," she said, catching her breath. "I'm sorry I didn't meet you earlier. I understand there was an issue with your check-in." "There was," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." She entered, clearly nervous. "I have already spoken with my team, and I just want to say how sincerely sorry I am. I'm not sure what happened, but it doesn't reflect how we run things here." Reuben sat down. She remained standing. "Tell me," he said, folding his hands. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes. After Calvin came back, I checked the records. You're on the ownership documentation through Ellington Travel Partners. You're the silent stakeholder." He nodded once. "So why do you think your staff told me this place was full?" Amelia shifted her weight, choosing her words carefully. I think they made assumptions, based on your appearance, based on things they shouldn't be using to evaluate a guest." "That's the right answer," Reuben said. "But I need to know, do you tolerate that kind of behavior here?" "No," she said firmly now. "I don't, and I will personally handle it." Reuben studied her. "Good, because I won't make a scene, but I will remember it." He stood. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone, but I believe in accountability. I built this hotel to be better, not just nicer furniture and better service, better values, you understand?" Amelia nodded quickly. Absolutely. I'll make sure it's addressed. He extended his hand. She shook it. Thank you for your time, he said. As she left, he closed the door and turned to Aubrey, who was now curled up on the couch, flipping through a resort magazine. Everything okay now? She asked. Getting there, he said. But Ruben wasn't finished watching. Not yet. The next morning, Ruben was up before the sun. Old habits, hard to shake. He brewed the in-room coffee, terrible stuff, but better than nothing, and stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cool, dry, and still. Below him, the pool was empty, the patio chairs perfectly aligned. He leaned against the railing, watching. He wasn't mad anymore. That had passed. Now? He was curious. What kind of place had this become when no one was looking? At 8 o'clock a.m., sharp, he and Aubrey headed downstairs. She wore her favorite orange dress with sneakers, hair in 2 poofy ponytails she insisted on doing herself. Ruben wore the same kind of outfit as before, plain t-shirt, old jeans, no watch, no labels. They looked like any father and daughter on a simple getaway. That was the point. As they passed through the lobby, he noticed Mackenzie at the desk again. Her smile was tight, eyes down, hands fidgeting with something under the counter. Calvin stood nearby, overly polite to the well-dressed guests who came in asking about the breakfast buffet. Ruben didn't stop. He and Aubrey made their way to the main restaurant, Desert Bloom Cafe, just off the lobby. Table for 2? Asked the hostess, a young woman with box braids and a clipboard. Yes, please, Ruben said. She smiled genuinely. Right this way. That was a good sign. They were seated near the windows. Ruben ordered a veggie omelet and coffee. Aubrey went straight for the pancakes with chocolate chips and extra syrup. Midway through the meal, Ruben noticed something. An older couple, white, mid-60s, clearly local regulars, were seated nearby. When the hostess walked away, they called over a server directly. We don't want to sit this close, the man said. Can we be moved somewhere quieter? The server glanced around. The only nearby table was next to Ruben and Aubrey. She hesitated. The woman chimed in. We'd prefer to be away from all the activity. The word activity hung in the air. The man looked straight at Ruben when he said it. Ruben said nothing. The server, looking uncomfortable, walked them toward the other side of the restaurant, away from them. Aubrey didn't seem to notice. She was drawing a bunny on her napkin in syrup, but Ruben noticed, and so did someone else. The hostess, the same young woman who'd seated them, approached quietly a few minutes later. Everything okay over here? Ruben smiled. We're good, thanks. She lowered her voice a little. I just wanted to say, I saw that, and I'm sorry. That couple's known to be a bit sensitive. Ruben looked up at her. You handled it well. She nodded once. Thanks. Let me know if anyone else gives you trouble. She walked away, head high, back straight. Now that was someone worth investing in. By 10 o'clock a.m., they were back in the lobby. Ruben took a seat with his coffee and opened his phone, pretending to scroll. Aubrey sat nearby with her headphones, watching a movie. But he was watching everything. One guest, a younger black man in a suit, possibly in town for a conference, walked in and approached the front desk. Ruben saw Mackenzie tense immediately. The man was polite, handed over his ID, said his company had booked through the corporate rate. Mackenzie looked it up, then told him she didn't see it. He asked her to try again. She said there was nothing she could do, told him to call his company and come back with a confirmation. The man, clearly embarrassed but keeping his cool, stepped away and dialed his phone. 30 seconds later, Ruben stood up, walked up to the desk. Excuse me, he said to Calvin. Can I speak with Amelia? Calvin flinched like he'd been waiting for this moment. She's actually not in yet. Ruben turned to Mackenzie. You sure about that? Mackenzie's face paled. I'll check, Calvin said, already reaching for the phone. Ruben turned to the young man still on his call. What company are you with? The man looked surprised. Trivest Energy. They told me everything was handled. Did they tell you which room? Standard King? Ruben nodded. They booked through our corporate rate last week. I approved the contract. The man's eyes widened. Wait, our? I'm Ruben Ellington, he said calmly. This hotel is mine. Mackenzie didn't move. Calvin nearly dropped the phone. Ruben turned to her. You saw my name yesterday. You saw my face. You chose to act like I didn't belong here. Silence. And now this gentleman, who looks like me, dresses better than I do, speaks respectfully, comes in, and suddenly the system's blank again? He stepped back. I don't want excuses. I want accountability. And I want to see Amelia when she is in. Today. Ruben turned back to the young man. You'll have your room in 5 minutes. He waved over the hostess from earlier. Can you help him get settled? She nodded. Of course. Ruben watched her walk off with the guest. Then he sat back down next to Aubrey. She looked up. Did you fix it again? He sipped his coffee. Working on it. Because this time, he wasn't just observing. He was taking names. By noon, the story had made its rounds. Staff whispered near the elevators. The barista at the lobby cafe suddenly offered Ruben a free refill. No questions asked. The bellhops, who hadn't even looked in his direction the night before, now gave quick nods and stood a little straighter when he passed by. Ruben didn't need attention. That wasn't his goal. But what he did want was happening. People were realizing they'd been seen. He and Aubrey spent the early afternoon at the pool. She splashed in the shallow end, chasing a pool noodle like it was the highlight of her life. Ruben stayed poolside, stretched out on a lounger, still watching. A group of employees passed by now and then. He caught familiar glances, side eyes, double takes, but no one approached. At 2:47 p.m., he received a text. Amelia is in, waiting in the executive lounge. You're welcome to meet there at your convenience. He dried off, got Aubrey a snack from the cafe, and said, I've got to talk to some people for a few minutes. Want to hang in the room and watch cartoons? She nodded, mouth full of fruit snacks. He walked into the lounge, which was empty except for Amelia and one other man. White, bald, mid-50s, suit with no tie. Name tag clipped to his breast pocket, Gordon Presley, regional director. Ah, so they were bringing out the regional brass now. Amelia stood. Mr. Ellington? Ruben shook her hand, then turned to Gordon. The man extended a firm handshake. Mr. Ellington, pleasure. I flew in from Dallas this morning. Amelia gave me a full report, and I'd like to apologize personally. Ruben took a seat. You read the report? He asked. I did. Good. So you already know this wasn't a system error. It was a people problem. Gordon nodded. I agree. Amelia added quickly, I've already spoken with Mackenzie. We're placing her on administrative leave while we conduct a full review. Ruben tilted his head slightly. And the rest of your team? We're reevaluating training protocols, reviewing who's had anti-bias training, and who... He held up a hand. I didn't come here to hear about training modules. They went quiet. I came here because this property matters to me. I bought it with the idea that people, all people, should feel welcome walking through those doors. Not just the ones who fit someone's mental picture of who belongs. Gordon shifted in his chair. Ruben continued, calm but deliberate. Last night, your staff lied. Today, I watched the same pattern happen again. And it wasn't subtle. It was repeated, calculated, and most importantly, avoidable. He paused. I don't care if someone works behind a desk or cleans floors. Every role here deserves respect. But respect isn't a one-way street. If your team disrespects guests, especially repeatedly, then someone isn't doing their job. Amelia nodded. We hear you. No, you don't, he said, firmer now. You're responding. There's a difference. Gordon cleared his throat. So what would you like us to do? Ruben leaned forward, elbows on the table. I want more than disciplinary action. I want you to use this as a case study, something real, something your staff can't ignore. Not a module, not a slide deck. A meeting with names, details, consequences. They didn't interrupt. I want it clear this is not about me. It's about anyone who walks into this hotel, whether they're wearing loafers or flip-flops, whether they drove here in a rental or a Lexus. If your first response is to assume someone doesn't belong, you don't belong on my team. He stood. And I want every one of those guests, especially the ones who were brushed off, to be followed up with personally, with an apology, not a voucher. Gordon nodded slowly. Consider it done. Ruben looked at Amelia. You're good at your job, but don't cover for people who aren't. It brings down the whole house. I understand. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and Gordon? Yes? Next time your team lets someone slip through like this, Make sure it's not a Marine who owns the place." He left the lounge without waiting for a response. Back in the elevator, Ruben exhaled. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even disappointment. It was clarity. And sometimes, that's the most dangerous thing a person can have. He had given them their wake-up call. Now it was on them to decide what they'd do with it. The next morning felt different. Ruben noticed it the second he stepped off the elevator. The lobby had the same marble floors, the same indoor waterfall, the same scent of cedar and lavender. But the energy had shifted. Calvin greeted him first. Not with nerves this time, but something closer to humility. "Good morning, Mr. Ellington," he said, standing straighter. "Your daughter enjoy the pool yesterday?" Ruben nodded. "She did. Thank you." Calvin looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. Instead, he gave a respectful nod and got back to work. In the restaurant, the hostess who had seated them before approached again. "Hey, I heard what you did," she said under her breath. "A lot of us really appreciate it." Ruben smiled. "You were already doing things right. That's what matters." After breakfast, Ruben and Aubrey walked the grounds together. She clung to his arm, swinging her feet off the edge of the decorative stone borders, humming some tune she'd made up. To her, this place was just a fancy hotel with a big pool and unlimited pancakes, and Ruben wanted to keep it that way, for now. But as they passed by the conference room hallway, Amelia stepped out. She was holding a clipboard, face serious, but not tense. "Mr. Ellington," she said, "do you have a moment?" Aubrey looked up at her father. He gave her a wink. "Go get your tablet from the room. I'll meet you up there." Once she was gone, Amelia cleared her throat. "I thought you should know. We held a full staff meeting this morning. Mandatory. I walked them through what happened. Names, details, everything." Ruben raised an eyebrow. "How'd they take it?" She didn't sugarcoat it. Some were defensive. A few were embarrassed. A couple tried to play dumb, but they listened. And I made it clear this wasn't optional growth. It was required. He nodded. "That's what I wanted to hear." "I also let them know you'd be speaking with corporate next week. They're interested in building this into our training materials chain-wide." Ruben chuckled. "Good. Maybe it'll keep someone else from going through this." Amelia offered a small, genuine smile. "For what it's worth, you didn't have to handle it this way. You could have made a public scene, called a press conference, gotten people fired on the spot." "Maybe," Ruben said, "but what would my daughter learn from that?" Amelia didn't answer right away. "She'd learn that power's something you swing," Ruben said, "not something you stand on. That's not what I want for her. I want her to understand respect, not revenge." Amelia looked down at her clipboard. "We'll do better, I promise you." "I believe you." He turned to go, then stopped. "Let me ask you something," he said over his shoulder. "If I'd walked in here wearing a suit, no kid, different last name, do you think this would have happened?" Amelia was honest. "No, probably not." Ruben nodded. "Then we both know what needs to change." Later that afternoon, Aubrey wanted to visit the gift shop downstairs. She had $10 of birthday money burning a hole in her pocket. As they browsed, Mackenzie entered the store quietly. She looked smaller than she had a few days ago. Not physically, just less sure, less sharp around the edges. "Mr. Ellington?" she said softly. He turned. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you, for how I looked at you." Aubrey was thumbing through postcards nearby. "I've been thinking about it a lot, and I realized I assumed things I had no right to assume, and I can't take it back, but I'm sorry." Ruben studied her face. She meant it. You could tell when someone wasn't putting on a show. He gave a small nod. "Thank you for saying that." She looked relieved. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but—" "I do forgive you," he said, "but I won't forget, and neither should you." She swallowed and nodded. "I won't." As she walked away, Aubrey ran up holding a stuffed javelina toy. "Daddy, can I get this?" He chuckled. "What is that?" "It's a desert pig." He held out her $10 bill. "It's all yours, boss." They spent the rest of the trip enjoying themselves. Pool days, room service, movies before bed. And for the first time in a long time, Ruben felt like he wasn't just fixing things. He was building something. On their final morning, as they loaded up the car, Calvin came outside with 2 cold water bottles and a paper bag. Just a little road snack for you and your daughter, he said. Muffins from the kitchen. No charge. Reuben accepted it. Thank you. Calvin looked him in the eye. We won't forget the lesson, sir. I hope not. He buckled Aubrey into the back seat, gave her a kiss on the forehead, and slid into the driver's seat. As they pulled away from the Sierra Marais, Aubrey said, Daddy? Yeah? You're like a secret superhero. He smiled. Nah, just your dad. Because sometimes the biggest power move is walking away with your head high and your hands clean. Don't judge people by what they wear, how they look, or what you think they can afford. Respect is free to give and costly to ignore. If this story made you think twice about the way we treat people based on first impressions, share it. Maybe someone who needs to hear it will see it at the right time. And if you've ever been on the other side of that front desk, stay patient. You never know who's watching.